Hello and welcome to our SendMyAd webinar for December. We are going to talk today about some items that have been in the portal for quite a long time, but also some newer things that you may not have noticed. And we're going to do that by way of going through and looking at our portal settings. Now, we started this topic a couple of months ago, and we started talking about the general settings. And this time we decided to devote the whole session to this because there are so many settings in there. We're not going to explore some of the areas that really are topics all by themselves that we've either covered in earlier recent webinars or will address in other meetings. But we want to hit the highlights. We want to hit the print ad settings, which is by far the largest grouping of settings. We'll talk about the site text templates, which are often overlooked. And we'll talk a little bit about changing your site logo and site appearance. Along the way, if you have questions, please let us know. You can type those in the chat session. There's also a Zoom button in the GoToWebinar software if you need to expand your screen to accommodate what I'm showing. We'll take your questions as they come, or we'll save them at the end, just depending on the relevance and where we are and time. So, okay, let's get started then. We've got a lot to cover. So, here I am at the main login screen, and I'm going to log in as a publisher. And this is a publisher administrator. So I see pretty much all the options. Okay. I will say that my particular demo publisher has more or less all the options in the software enabled, including virtual publisher, ad creator, things like that. So you will probably see a lot more in my screen than what you're used to seeing. I'll point those out when I come to those. Okay. Well, let's get started. First of all, where are the publisher settings? When we talk about publisher settings, we're really referring to your company profile, part of which are the settings. So just to give you a quick overview here, these are all the settings that you use to control your portal on the right side of your screen. There's basic information, address, phone number, website, things like that. You can access the reports. You can see how much storage you're taking up. And there are also some options for managing languages if you support more than one language, dealing with publication domains, which is a whole other topic, and viewing activity logs. So, but most of this interface is given over to settings. Okay. Now, general, we talked about those 2 webinars ago. Virtual publisher, we're not going to deal with that. That's a separate product. Okay. Editorial page, that also goes along with virtual publisher. So you probably don't see those in your portal. But print ad settings you all have. So let's start there. Okay. Now, print ad settings and the other settings in here are kind of interesting. Some of these came about as very, very specific requests from publishers. A publisher would come to us and say, we really need this one particular feature. There's something that the portal doesn't do that we must have. Sometimes it was a requirement in order to begin using the portal. And so, when we get feature requests, we evaluate each one. And we look at it and we say, maybe this is something that everybody wants, and we'll make it the default behavior, and we might let you turn it off. Okay. But very often they're things that are very specific to just you. And so we'll make that a setting in here, and the default behavior will be off. Okay, so you can turn it on for yourself, but it won't affect other people. Okay. All right, so the first couple here are ones that that were very much like that. And one was a publisher wanted to restrict their advertisers to only upload from an existing materials request. They wanted every ad in the system to start off life as a materials request that the publisher created. So that's something that you can turn that on, and then your advertisers, they won't even see the option to send an ad. They have to look at their ads list. They'll see their materials request, reservation, and they can upload through that. Again, a very, very specific thing, but it's there in case you decided that that's what your workflow should be. Okay, advertisers can revise ad material request. What this means is that it's a little confusing the way it's worded, but what it really means is that if you have such an ad that began life as a reservation, and then the user came and uploaded materials to that, then what happens is that switch will let them either be able to revise those types of ads or not. So basically, it's just kind of locking down the revise feature for those types of ads. Now, if they just simply upload a new ad, having nothing to do with the reservation, then they can still revise it just as they would normally. Okay, but that's it makes some sense. If you start off the procedure with a materials request, and that is very important in your workflow, you may be the one that's driving the revision process. It may be that a publisher's workflow requires them to make a new type of material request for the reservation. So that's why that's there. Okay. And that's also why the default behavior is to turn that on, because that is a very specific type of workflow. Okay. All right, the next two also kind of go together here, and that's allow upload of zip files and hide the ability to upload zip files. So just to show you what that is, I'm going to come back and I'll send an ad or go through the form. Okay, this is all not relevant. I'll just quickly pick something. Okay, so I've got my form filled out. Okay, and you can see here that it tells me I only take PDF files. So let's browse for a file. And you can see that we're showing in this list PDF files, but I'm also showing zip files. Okay. So it actually allows me to upload the zip file. It allows the user to display zips and to upload them. Okay. Why would you do this? Well, this is kind of why. I mean, you upload a zip file and you can't really do anything with it. I mean, we pass it through. We can't pre-flight it. This is sort of a fail-safe for users sometimes where they just can't figure out how to get it through pre-flight, but you want it to go through your approval process. Okay, you want them to actually sign off on the fact that they've sent the ad. But it's not your first preference. I mean, you want PDF files. You want to be able to, to pre-flight those and to be able to use all the features of the portal. So this is a way for you to kind of sort of accept zip files, but not advertise it. Because you don't want your advertisers getting lazy and figuring out that they've got a back way through the system. Okay, so you basically just turn on, if you want to allow zips, then we show the zip icon. But if you want to keep it discrete, turn on the hide ability. Okay, now another funny thing with settings that you should be aware of is that sometimes it's deceiving because you've got one little check mark here, one little line with a box, and you click it, and it can drastically alter the behavior of the portal. Okay, so this is one. Allow only one issue per ad. Now, that's off right now. And so because that's off, let's see, if I go to one of my existing ads, you can see that down here in my left ad panel, it says issues running in, and I can edit issues here. And I can assign multiple issues to my ad. Okay, and so I have this separate interface for this. Now, if I turn that off, and I only allow one issue per ad, this little section here turns into just a very simple select menu like this. Okay, and my issues will appear in that select menu, and I can pick one. Well, that has some pretty broad implications in the portal, because it means that you can't just simply add another issue like that. It means that if you need your ad to run in multiple issues, you may have to do a duplication of the ad. You may have to do pickups. Okay. But there are reasons why this is critical for some workflows, for some publishers. And also, if you use what we call our Smart File API, if you're programmatically interfacing with SendMyAd, this is actually a requirement. So it's one of those things where it's just a little check mark, but it really does have a big impact. So that can really be sure you know what you're clicking before you start changing things. Okay. Manage upload form items is one of those areas I mentioned that actually really has had a separate topic in the webinar, and probably in the future will as well. So I'm not going to dwell on this, but I just want to point out that this is where you are able to customize what your SendMyAd upload form looks like. So what fields are there in the list for the advertiser to see, and also are they required or not? Okay, because some things can be simply informational and they're not critical for your workflow. So you don't have to require them, kind of lessen the burden on the uploader. But you can also require those things that are very significant for you. And you can see that we've got quite a few things here. Okay. So that form is really very customizable, including showing a publication search if you have a lot of publications. If you don't, you can just turn it off and it's not necessary. So anyway, that's there. That's where you can find it. Again, that's a whole separate topic sometime. Okay, the manage ad upload form message is a useful one, and that's often overlooked. And that is where you can say, you can type in any text here. It can be HTML, it can be styled, it can include links, HTML links to other resources. And what this does is it just allows you to display a message at the top of the upload form. So we'll just make a really minor change here. We'll just make that bold, save and close. Okay, now let's go back to our upload form. And you can see right here, it's actually, hopefully you can see this remotely, but I typed in the word print ads and I made it bold, pre-flighted as bold there. Okay. So I mentioned that you can put in links, and that is traditionally why you might want to use that feature. That would let you, for example, if you have a PDF file that you distribute to your advertisers with all of your ad sizes or instructions on how to create ads, how to submit ads, you can link to that PDF right there. So you put the PDF on your website somewhere, and wherever it's accessible, and then you just put your link and it will be available just as if we were hosting it. So great way to link in things like that. Legalese, whatever you might need. And so that's where that's found. Okay, manage custom metadata options. That's also a whole separate topic. Okay, but that gives you an interface that lets you create your own fields that go on the upload form. Okay, So that's something we have talked about in the past, and we'll probably do again. It can get a little complicated, and but just be aware that that's there. Okay, manage publication groups. You maybe noticed when I went to my upload form that I actually had to select a group, and that's where this comes from, A to M and N to Z, I call them. And in a publication group, you say that we want to use it on the upload form, and you just simply say which publications are in the group. Okay, so I have 2 here, and this use is precisely why the feature is there. For people who have a huge number of publications, all active at the same time, that list of publications can be very daunting. Okay, so it's one way to manage that. So in this case, you turn on publication groups and you get this extra pop-up here, and I'm going to say that it's in the A to M group, and sure enough, I only see the active publications that are alphabetically between A and M. Okay. Now, there are other ways to deal with this. If you have a lot of publications back on your upload form, you have the option to show the A to Z selector. Okay, and that's just a long bar across the top of the upload form with a letter for every publication, and you can just select from the letter, and you get a menu with that. Or you upload you allow the search option, so you can start typing a couple letters of the publication you're looking for, and you'll get it from a list. Okay, so it's another way to attack the same problem. Again, if you have a lot of publications, one of those features will help you. Okay, and the last one here in this little group dealing with the upload form is manage print ad types. So you can classify your ads. Maybe there's classifieds, full display ads, whatever metadata is useful for you. PSAs typically run in a magazine, so you can tag the ads like that, and then you can search on that information, or deal with it with delivery, things like that. So it's custom information that is useful for you. Okay, let's move on to the ad details view. And this is talking about when you actually open up an ad, or something to do with what ads you can see, and then how you see them when you open them up. So the first one is to show the download final ad button when the ad is complete. So I have that turned off. But this applies for advertisers. I'm logged in as a publisher. So I see this download final ad button, but because I have it turned off, if I log in as an advertiser, I'll see 5 buttons here. I won't see the download final ad button. Why would you do that? Well, it may be that you just don't want the advertiser to download their ad. I mean, you've paid a fee for them to process their PDF through the system, and maybe you don't want them taking that PDF with them. Maybe you need to tightly control the flow of those files, and you don't want versions floating around, so you only want internally to be able to download them, or to be sure that all your ads are delivered via an FTP server rather than people trying to download them. Okay, so again, that was a kind of a custom thing that somebody wanted, but it may be useful. Okay, show pre-flight info and ad share page. That is simply that we have the ability to share an ad, and we can say whether or not the pre-flight information goes along with it. So here we're talking about this feature, share this ad, and we show the pre-flight results. Okay, if that is not what you want, if you don't want that information public, because that is a link that anybody can send and view, just turn it off there. Okay, the default behavior is on, but that can be easily turned off. Okay, show advertisers your publisher, meaning yourself as a publisher, historical ad activity. So every ad maintains a running log of events, and that's viewed down here in the history. Okay, we use this all the time in support. When you tell us you've got a problem with an ad, sometimes we have to sort through, what actually happened with the ad, and this is the running log that goes through. Now, you can see that when this ad started out as a reservation, and that was me that did this as a publisher user, but then my other account that's an advertiser went through and looked at the ad, submitted materials, all this stuff. But there's like a big mingling of my activity and then the advertiser activity. So this lets you hide your activity from the advertiser. So that can kind of cut down on clutter for them in the log. Maybe you don't want to say that you've done anything with the ad. Maybe you need to keep that as an internal detail. But that's where you turn that off. Then they'll only be able to see their own activity. Let's see, allow users to write notes about files. That is talking about this notes tab down here. Okay, so if that button is turned off, the notes tab will not appear down here. Now, as I was testing this today before our webinar, I discovered a kind of an odd thing with that. So we'll be looking at that feature a little more closely in development. But for now, just know that essentially turns off this little drawer down here at the notes section. Okay, there's a couple. Some of these are kind of self-explanatory. There are two that we put in here fairly recently. This was a few upgrades ago, but definitely something you need to be aware of. And that's how we let advertisers edit a reservation. So sometimes you want to make it so that when you create an ad reservation, you may know all the details of the ad. You may know that you want to control what the size is and the issue. And that is pretty often the case. But if that process on your side is not as locked down, and you want to allow the advertiser some flexibility, they can, with these options, they can change the ad size, or they can change the issue. Okay. But very, very often, you're making the reservations for a reason, and you may not want them changing that, so you can control that here. I'm going to skip a few things. Some of these really are pretty explanatory. One of these is the default action for ads which have trim problems. So very often someone has the wrong size on their ad, and we display a, let's see if I have one somewhere. Okay, yeah, here's one. So this one has a trim issue, okay? And you can say that we don't make a suggestion, okay? But we can also lead the user towards one of the two ways in which they can try to deal with trim. And that is, you can say to suggest to them that they use the trim tool, or the easier option is to suggest that they auto center. Now, they can do either one, but this is you trying to sort of guide them towards one or the other. So if you find that most of your advertisers, all they really need to do is kind of reset the boxes, center them up, you can guide them towards that. Okay, this one's pretty interesting. It's an often overlooked one, but it's a way for you to establish the default view setting when you invite a new user or you set up a new user on your staff. So what this is talking about, your three options are trimmed, ad boxes, and spec boxes. So if I switch back and I look at my ad, okay, you can see, this is way out of sync, but you can see that in my views drawer down here, I'm looking at the spec boxes. Okay, I can also look at the ad boxes, which is a good contrast. Those are dramatically different, right? And I can also look at the trimmed view. Okay, so that option just simply allows you to say that, hey, when a new user is created, I want them to see this view. I want them to see my ad specs and not the file boxes. Okay. Now, this is only used when the new user is first created. You can't force them to keep using that view. They can change it just like I showed you myself changing it there. Okay. But this at least gets them started using your preferred view. Okay. All right. We've talked about this in one of the last seminars about the ad list, but we've given some new options for how you can sort and display issues. So that's where you set that there. We're going to go down to add actions, and we'll talk briefly about some of these. Again, some of these have big implications and are sort of separate topics. Okay, but let's talk about just one of the biggest ones here, and that is how you handle trimming. So by default, what we do is we stamp a new trim box in the file when someone trims it. Okay, so the data is all still there, and all we're doing is we're changing the boxes so that the trim is now correct. We don't have to do that though. Okay, we can also, instead of doing that, we can actually chop the file at the point where the user sets the trim and bleed in our trim tool. Now that, of course, that really alters the file pretty significantly. If you allow that option, then you're also able to let the trim tool scale the file. Okay. But if you're keeping the boxes, then we don't allow you to scale. So that's where that's set up. But you can optionally turn that on or off. There's also the ability to show a information pop-up before launching the trim tool. So that just simply when they click trim, an optional message will come up. They can dismiss it and not see it again. But it's a way for you to give them some extra help or maybe some disclaimer that, hey, you're about to possibly edit your file destructively. You're on your own. You're taking responsibility for this. So be sure you look at your proof, right? So that's there if you need it. Okay, picking up ads, I just want to point out one here, and that's the pickup treatment, allow pickups to be reprocessed. If you turn that on, it means that a user can pick up an ad from one ad size to a different ad size. Okay, it's not required that the ad sizes match from publication to publication. Very often that's okay, because if that happens, we will re-preflight the file. We'll give the user an opportunity to trim the file to make it match maybe the slightly different trim size of the destination publication. But you may not want to allow that in your workflow. It may be that a pickup for you means only between a group of publications that have the exact same trim size. So that's where you enforce that. Okay. Revising ads, we have the make, rejection, and revision reason mandatory. That's generally turned on, and we advise you to. You want to have some idea of why somebody's revising or rejecting. But if you find that that's a burden for the users, and it's not significant for you, you can turn it off right there. Okay. The last big one there we want to talk about is splitting ads. And if you are using ad splitting, there's a newish feature where the splitting can happen when the advertiser approves the file. So traditionally with splitting, it's a publisher feature that you don't necessarily need the advertiser to be aware of. It's a production type step. So here you can let them see the split pages if you want, but if not, we just sort of hide it. And so from the advertiser's perspective, their spread always looks like a spread. But when you look at it as a publisher, you'll see the split ad pages. Okay. All right, I'm going to skip through print ad notifications. I think you know that those are there, and that's where you customize those. If you have other types of ads in your portal, like digital ads, there'll be a whole section of the corresponding notifications for those. Okay. All right, but kind of on that same subject, I want to skip down to templates. Okay, these are grouped into two. Okay, there are general notifications and site text templates. Now, a lot of the notifications, the emails that we send, they're tied to a type of ad, a type of file. So if you have Virtual Publisher, there's a whole set of emails that go along with the fact that that they're pages that you're dealing with. With print ads, you've got a whole other set, and digital ads, if you're doing those, they're different because there's different information that goes along with those. Sometimes there's different events that happen based on those types of files. So we group those together. But in this section, these are things that typically, for the most part, don't really depend on the type of file. Okay, so they're things like if you send out the email to tell a user to reset their login. They lost their password, so they've asked for an email to tell them, how to change the password. That has nothing to do with files, okay? And so that's where you can click this and you can change that here. Again, it's not tied to whether or not they're a customer dealing primarily with digital ads or not. It just doesn't matter. The user welcome email, hey, thanks for joining SendMyAd. Okay, and you can customize that all there. Okay, now the part that is often really overlooked is this one, and that's the general site text templates. This is stuff like, how do we break the bad news that your file is messed up? Okay, you can set this stuff in here. You can explain, hey, however politely you want to say it. This ad, we can't accept it because blah blah blah. Okay. Again, it doesn't tie into a particular file type, but this is all text that is somewhere in your portal. And if you look through it, there's an awful lot that you have control over. Okay, and this is very, very often overlooked. So just want to really point out that this is here. Look through this stuff. If you pick any of this text, you'll recognize this if you use the portal quite often. Okay, and this is where you can change it. Okay. All right, we're almost out of time here. We're running a little late. So I just want to point out the look and feel. We've actually had a couple of requests lately in support for changing someone's long-standing logo in the site. And this is where you do it. So at the very bottom, look and feel, you can change your company logo. Okay, and in each of these cases, we try to tell you what the exact size is. What is the size that you can use for your file. If you don't follow our instructions, your logo is not going to fit in the space provided. Okay, so it tells us exactly in pixels what it should be, and it also gives you the handy advice to refresh your browser after the upload. That is the case for pretty much all of these, maybe not every single time, but for the most part, if you upload a new logo, you're going to have to quit your browser, possibly even clear your cache if you change the CSS rules in order for you to see the changes. So, don't upload something and then panic because it doesn't go through. You still see your old logo. Quit your browser, go back in. It'll probably be there. If not, clear the cache of your browser, at least for our site, and then log back in. So that's the logo, and that appears here. It appears up here, and it appears on the login screen. The ad portal main image, that is what you see at the login screen. And the edit ad portal site, we even give you a warning about this, that hey, you kind of have the ability to mess up how your site looks if you do this wrong. I mean, this is CSS code. So my advice with this would be, even though we provide you with an editor here, the easiest, safest thing to do is copy this, okay? Put it in a text editor, make a safe copy, and then from a copy in your text editor, go through and make your changes. Now, what is typically done here are changing things like the background color of the front, okay? We can help you with this stuff in support, but if you have a web developer that wants to help you with this, you can easily kind of inspect our styles, and then you'll know what to change in here. I'll give you a trick, and that is if you upload your logo in the previous interface I showed you, you want to call it logo.png, or you need to change the name here. Okay, so that's how we tie it in on the front page. So if you happen to upload it and you called it, my new wonderful logo.png, it may appear inside the portal at the header, but you won't see it here. So either change it in the CSS or just simply name it logo.png, and it'll work automatically. So, all right, well, it was a lot to cover. There were some things that we obviously, glossed over, but there is a lot in there, and it controls a lot of stuff in the site. You have a lot of opportunity to make the portal your portal. And so that's the first place to look. If you have any questions on those types of things, let us know, and we'll be happy to help you. All right, well, thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. We hope to see you next month. And if you have any topics that you would like to see, just let us know. And you can send us an email in support or talk to your sales rep, and we'd be delighted to add that to the next agenda. Thanks very much. Have a great afternoon.